December 19th, 2020. $23,000 Bitcoin. Who could have known? Funny, because I also remember saying $1,000 Bitcoin. Who could have known? That was a long time ago now. I'm DRutter, silver bullion bug, cannabis activist, libertarian vlogger, conspiracy theorist, peacemonger, and Bitcoin seer. Wait, Bitcoin seer? Surely that's an exaggeration. A seer has superior insight, wisdom, and intuition. There are a lot of Bitcoin channels out there, many with followings in the millions, and that's only going to increase now that Bitcoin has broken the $20,000 level and is surging to new all-time highs. A lot of people will say, and are already saying, I knew this would happen with Bitcoin. So what's my claim to fame? Actually, I have three. One, I'm among the first vloggers to cover Bitcoin and blockchain, getting these issues out to my viewers before nearly everyone else. I was so early, people who learned about it from me went on to teach others, including several channels with tens of thousands of crypto enthusiast subscribers, and outward from there in ripples. I was watching the price when it fell to the 2 digits, and I'm talking about cents. I was regularly doing technical analysis and discussing crypto fundamentals years before most people had heard of Bitcoin, all through 2013. I first began discussing its pros and cons on my YouTube channel in early 2011, just after the first Bitcoin videos by my friend DaVinci J15, who later went on to become both rich and famous. Had I not had him to introduce me to the idea, and as a programmer vouch for the quality of the open source code, it would have been later and less impressive when I began to introduce my money and currency focused audience to crypto. Still, I take credit here for myself, too. I mean, we all heard about crypto from somebody or somewhere else, except Satoshi Nakamoto. Many of us heard about it, and at first passed it by. I had the luck, but also the wisdom and intuition, to spot a promising concept at a key moment and not pass it by. To this day, I am thanked by dozens of Bitcoiners who heard about it from me in 2011 and 2013 and are so happy now they didn't just brush me off. I was criticized for my Bitcoin coverage, especially early on, but I felt it important enough to learn about and share it with others that I took the temporary hit to my reputation. I was right, and all my critics have long since disappeared. Hey, it's DRutter, and it's March the 20th, 2013, and the following is just a ramble about Bitcoin. If you're not interested in Bitcoin, please don't watch. I'm not saying I'm interested in Bitcoin other than to learn from it. I don't invest in Bitcoin. I'm not speculating in it. I don't hold any of this currency. But I do like to learn about things, and Bitcoin is a currency, and I like to learn about money and currency and how they are related and how they aren't related. And this is teaching me some things, so maybe you can learn something too. It's at 65.70 right now, as you can see. Another thing people are doing wrong with Bitcoin, I think, is they say Bitcoin is $66 and silver is $29. This is ridiculous. Silver is an ounce of physical metal, and Bitcoin is a digital idea. And that's true. But they're comparing a currency to a money, so you're comparing something, in a completely different category. It's not even apples and oranges, it's apples and shoes. It doesn't compare. Bitcoin, as we know, is one of the only currencies that has a limited supply. Other currencies are inflating themselves away in a race to the bottom, and Bitcoin isn't, and can't. So that's why I say Bitcoin can go to $1,000. One other thing I want to say is, you see this a lot on the internet. If someone talks about something, they can be criticized. Well, there's things out there that are very unpleasant that need to be talked about. I'm not saying Bitcoin's unpleasant, but maybe Bitcoin is a bad thing. Maybe Bitcoin is horrible. I don't know. But should it not be talked about? No, we should probably talk about it.
and we should probably learn from it. Me talking about Bitcoin shouldn't be an insult to anyone. If you don't like Bitcoin, then either don't watch the video or whatever, but it's not, I don't see why people are angry at people who talk about things.
2 is the sheer volume of my correct calls and lack of bad calls on a consistent basis year after year after year. From chillingly accurate long-term projections made several years ago, to predicting each key level of resistance and support, to often being able to say exactly when a particular move would happen, I have stunned my followers and myself over and over with copious, flawless calls for years. Everything I've said on the topic remains up on YouTube and more recently on blockchain blogs like Steemit and Hive. I don't delete or change old content to fraudulently improve my accuracy rate. I legitimately just haven't made bad calls. I've challenged anyone to point out a prediction I made that went wrong, or even a hunch I had that was off, but neither they nor I can come up with anything. Over and over, up moves, down moves, consolidations, trend lines, breakouts, price points, dates, everything. I'm one of the most prolific and accurate Bitcoin forecasters, period. That's a claim to fame. And third is a specific call I made 2.5 years ago, linked below. It was part of a YouTube video and Steemit post called Bitcoin Returning to 4,000, and began by mentioning my flawless track record over a several-year stretch. The price had recently fallen from the $20,000 top at Christmas 2017 to stabilize at $7,500. Sentiment turned bullish, and everywhere you looked, finally, the pullback was said to be over. It was right then that I made my prediction, laughed at and ignored by almost everybody who saw it, that the price was soon going to dump in half with a plunge to 4,000 or even below. I detailed the coming 28 months of price action, mentioning key levels and dates up to and including the exciting conclusion we're seeing right at this very moment, December 2020, with the price breaking past $20,000 to new highs, exactly as, and even when, I foresaw. Hey guys, DRutter here. It's August 3rd, 2018, and recently I was talking about Bitcoin. And I was saying that I have been saying since Bitcoin hit $20,000 and started to come down, I said it looks like it's going to come down to 4,000. And recently it went up to 8,500 and a bunch of people said, oh my goodness, here we go to the moon. And I said, no, it has not gone down to 4,000 yet. It's still completing a pattern. And if you click on the link down below to go to my Steemit post on this, it shows you very clearly what part of the pattern, and you can see the different chart features, different ups, downs, points, and different parts where it crosses over moving averages and everything. It's very identical to the 2014 Bitcoin and cryptocurrency crash. It's doing the exact same pattern. It's just going through it about 50%, maybe 40% faster than it did before, but other than that, it's the exact same pattern. And there's all the same chart features, but we just haven't had that final crash down to about 4,000. I think it will be maybe 5,000, maybe high 3,000s, whatever, but it's not going to stay there for very long. It's probably going to return to 5,000 fairly quickly and then sort of consolidate 5,000 or 6,000 for months probably before it really starts to recover in 2019. And I think 2020 is going to be really the big year for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, where they'll, go to new all-time highs and make big headlines in the world again and get accepted at another larger wave of hedge funds and, brought into the broader economy even more than they have been before. So that video was one of my most downvoted ever, and the comments showed that nobody agreed with me. But it has been bang on, just like essentially everything I've ever put out. Since mid-2018, all my price discussions have pointed back to that one call, noting that it had been flawless so far, and I saw no reason to revise it. Even when the entire market was against me, like when it plunged to the $4,000 support level briefly this March, and I was widely ridiculed from my position, I stuck with my original stance. And here we are, with a couple weeks left in the year. The call, detailed and lengthy as it was, ended up being right over and over and over again, right to the end. It was so right that it now appears I had foreknowledge of the chart, which, of course, is impossible. I'm one of the first to ever produce video content on Bitcoin analysis, and soon became one of the best at price forecasting, with dozens of flawless consecutive calls, including a perfect multi-year prediction that culminated in the meteoric rise from $4,000 to $24,000, and probably beyond this year. In summary, Bitcoin Seer. The question becomes, if I'm so good at predicting the Bitcoin price, and I was watching it way back in the early days, why aren't I rich? Many of my subscribers already know this, but people generally find it difficult to believe a Bitcoin seer might not be rich. After all, many who are far from seers have invested in Bitcoin and become rich. Surely someone with my ability, if I'm telling the truth, would be traveling the world in luxury right now, like DaVinci J15, Jeff Berwick, and many others. Consider that all my videos and blockchain blog entries remain available and unedited. Also, I have had a continuous following and community with me this whole way that can and will vouch for my integrity, and that I have not manipulated my track record or been at all deceitful. Dozens of links to my Bitcoin material are provided below, going back to 2011, but I've been creating video content for 15 years. I'm not going to try to get everyone watching this to understand my personal philosophy behind investing and why I've chosen not to do so with Bitcoin. Some portion of people assume I've got to be lying. They simply don't believe someone would choose to watch an asset go up in price and not capitalize on it. So it's no use trying to convince all viewers of my integrity. They see it as foolish, and perhaps it is, because I could certainly use the funds, and they can't understand it truly has been my choice to not partake in the profits. Looking back on it now, I believe that my decision has, at least to some extent, led to my outstanding level of success, because my emotions and ego were truly not involved at any point. And saying that makes me realize that fame, too, could have changed the formula I had going on, and led to a decrease in accuracy over time. We'll never know, though, because thanks to deep and unrelenting shadow banning of my content, literally nobody other than a few hundred people know I exist. A hidden gem. If you're interested in more of my thoughts on why little old DRutter ended up being one of the top Bitcoin forecasters, see the links below. As I've said for years, it's up to me to report on this. Nobody else is going to notice my story or care enough to help get my content out to a larger audience. So if I want to break through the censorship and be heard, I have to do it myself. This is newsworthy, and I'm a vlogger who covers such topics, and no one else is going to do it, so apparently it is up to me. Besides, I know the most about my story, and I've documented the whole thing as it happened, so I'm probably the best person to put out this video. If viewers see it as nothing more than a big "I told you so," they're missing the point completely. Yes, I'm tooting my own horn here, but not for ego. When someone has a remarkable skill, and that skill could help potentially millions of others, shouldn't it get noticed? Also, I think about my other content, like my cannabis activism. My wife Medikatie and I were at the forefront of the activism scene in Vancouver in the years up to and since Canada's legalization in 2018. We opposed the Liberal government's takeover of the industry and destruction of the culture to install a corporate monopoly and expensive, low-quality government weed. We were the subject of a secret multi-million-dollar project called Operation Apprentice, which infiltrated, manipulated, and took down the free market and our peaceful, legitimate activism. Please see my documentary on the topic, Cannabis Legalization is a Lie. linked below. Because of this and other civil disobedience of unjust laws and advocating for free markets, peace, and free speech, I've been deplatformed from Facebook and heavily shadow banned on YouTube and other mainstream sites. Breaking through that censorship is a constant struggle, and it gets more and more intense every year, indeed every month. It would be great if my incredible success with forecasting Bitcoin prices could help my other liberty messages gain traction. Linked below is a post called "How Could a Bitcoin Seer Not Be Rich?" if you'd like more on that topic. So my avoidance of investing for profit is one explanation for why I'm not rich. Another, to be honest, is that I haven't had much to invest with, even if I'd wanted to. Death and turmoil in the family, then a sudden severe illness, which faded somewhat into a long-term disability, led to a homeless period for my wife and I in Vancouver during the peak of the housing crisis and real estate bubble there. I documented it all on YouTube and Steam as it happened. We finally found an apartment, and since 2018 we've been slowly trying to rebuild our health and finances. We stabilized to the point where Katie became so healthy she conceived, despite having been told after childhood cancer that it would be impossible, and after 10 years of us together. We decided to move away from our activism in Vancouver to settle down in a small interior BC town. Just after my son was born, the pandemic and lockdowns hit. We're tough, and we got through some pretty rough points, including a few times not having anywhere to sleep, not having enough food, so we're managing to cope through this ordeal in 2020 and providing as happy and normal a life for our son as possible. But no, there's nothing left over to tuck away. But my fraction of Bitcoin was still there for me when we returned to normalcy and being online regularly. While I've converted between cryptos, I've never sold them for fiat. I've also never gone directly from fiat to crypto. Everything I have in the crypto world, which isn't a lot, was earned by creating content. So my crypto and fiat worlds have never touched. But that's a whole other story, because it's not just that I don't want to trade between crypto and cash, I haven't been able to find a way to do it. I'm unbanked. I can't and won't use banks in any way, so you'd think crypto and I would be a perfect match. But I'm also very concerned about privacy and a cashless society. As such, I've never owned a smart device and never will. My experience has been that without a smart device and without a bank account, using crypto with any degree of privacy or decentralization is impossible. I've tried and challenged many others to come up with and demonstrate a clear, repeatable path, but to no avail. This, to me, is one of the biggest things holding back crypto from further adoption. If it's private and decentralized, but it can't be used that way, is it really private and decentralized? See my series Crypto Lunch for more on that. In short, I haven't been able to invest in crypto and don't want to anyway. My philosophy can also be seen in how I handle silver bullion. I'm in the group that calls it stacking, not investing. I have always considered silver and gold to be money itself, a savings of intrinsic value, not an investment to buy in and out of for profit. I don't diss people who do trade precious metals or crypto, but I ask them not to diss me for not trading them. I say all that to say this: if you can't, won't, or don't believe that I've made years of non-stop amazing calls without investing and profiting off them, so be it. My core audience knows the truth, despite having been whittled by non-stop shadow banning down to a handful of good people at this point. And most others with some logic skills and a few minutes to follow my links provided here will be able to figure it out, so I'll leave it there. But if I didn't pre-answer that one, it would have come up all over the comment section. So let's have a better look at the current chart. I scripted the first part of the video, but I think I'll freestyle the chart section here. And this is a typical chart that I have used and will continue to use. As part of my analysis, I will just pull up a long-term logarithmic chart like this one. Most analysts, I think by now, finally, it has taken a long time, and I've been talking about it and trying to teach others about it since I first spotted it, but they have now finally realized Bitcoin follows a pattern, and that this pattern can be best seen on a long-term logarithmic scale. You got to go and look long-term, going back to at least 2015, probably 2013 or 12 if you can, and try and use a logarithmic scale, because that will help you see long-term moves and moves that are over a large price scale as well. So large scale moves, both in terms of time and in price, are better, in my opinion, to be looked at on a logarithmic scale. And when you do this, you can see that Bitcoin follows this pattern of like making a new high and then usually plunging fairly rapidly, and then for a little while making some new lower lows from that point, but usually not retracing all the way back down to where it came from, and then flattening out, making kind of a U formation, a U or a bowl shape, or a cup, some people will call it, and then back up the other side. Just when people think, that's it, crypto's over, it's going to zero, that's when it recovers and it makes a new high once it passes that old high. So that is where we are now in 2020, and the end of 2020 and going into 2021. We have just broken through that essentially at Christmas time. And I've said many times for a few years now that at Christmas time, you can see the link down below to this, at Christmas time, Bitcoin will often make a high, a low, or it will break out to a new high from a level that it has previously been at a high from. That's the case this year at Christmas. It is breaking out to a new high. So at Christmas time, it's very, very typical for Bitcoin to have some kind of either a top, major top, like a long-term top, a long-term bottom, or make some new high level and proceed to new highs. So that's where we are now. And in order to understand the chart and spot that macro pattern, you have to be watching it for a little while. I recognized that in 2013, and some people are still not recognizing that. So please, if you aren't looking at a long-term logarithmic scale chart, please do that. It's very easy, it's very simple, and once you do that, then I think the pattern, especially by now, is starting to become pretty obvious. And that doesn't mean that it will go forever. Patterns only go until they don't go any further. So, the trend is your friend until it's not anymore, right? So, but so far, the trend has been making new highs, consolidating through time and price, and then making more new highs. So at least for now, that appears to be what's going on. So let's recap the last 5 or 6 years just briefly, starting at the left side of that chart there. That's when Bitcoin was down to $150 or $160, those two red candles, those 2 points down there. Incredible pullback there. And you almost never heard about Bitcoin, even from the alternative media or anyone. And then in Christmas, I guess, of 2015, it started to break out and made a new high, and then proceeded up through 2016 to make new highs. And you can see it never came back to that long-term moving average, that yellow line there. It never actually touched it again for a very long time. That whole bull market, it just never came back down there. And that's, I think, where we are. If you can look on the right-hand side of the chart now, in 2020 and going to 2021, we are far away from that orange or yellow line again. And so we are in that extended bull market mode. I don't think it's over, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. So back to 2016, 2017 became steeper, obviously. 2017 is when you started to hear more about Bitcoin in the media. In fact, the common person heard about Bitcoin, and that's when a lot of Bitcoin channels that are around today with millions, literally millions of viewers started, was 2017, because that's when those people first heard of it. But then it, of course, at Christmas of 2017 made that all-time famous top of $20,000, and we've been consolidating through time since then. And of course, Bitcoin has died in the minds of the mainstream media and many other people as well, many times since then, including, well, originally when it fell from 20,000 to 6,000 people. That's it, it's gone, it's done. And, it stabilized there. Then it had a further pullback to $4,000, which was said by everyone to be the end. A lot of people were forecasting $1,000 or less at that point, just very bearish and saying it's coming back down to essentially towards zero. And then it's never been at that low price again. It's recovered since then. There was a large bump in the middle of 2019, but couldn't hold that. And then there was the financial collapse, which brought Bitcoin down in, of course, early 2020, down to almost, I think, just touched $4,000 briefly again, just barely at that level, and then has taken off since then and recovered that $10,000 level. And once it passed that $10,000 level, there was nothing to stop it, and it has moved quickly from $10,000 up to $20,000 and now well over $23,000. This video is less about making new predictions and more about how we got here, but I'd like to touch on that quickly. Keeping in mind this is not investment, cooking, or relationship advice, I continue to believe the crypto market is headed much higher. The next major peak should be midway through 2021. I've done a few recent long-term forecasts and calculations, so I'll link those below. I'll put up on the screen now a new doodle I've been working on. It's not going to be perfect, but if things continue more or less the way they have, it's going to go something like this. I mentioned $1 million way back in 2013, and people literally laughed. And I've never said it was a sure thing, just that it was possible. And that possibility is looking more and more likely as the years go by. We could be pushing up to 80,000, even 120 or 150 within 6 to 9 months. There will be sharp pullbacks and even long consolidations, but if the trend holds, $1 million could happen in 2024 or 5. I'm working on a full long-term prediction video in the coming year. What about other cryptos? I'm not going to go into too much specifics, but here we can see that the overall crypto market is following a similar pattern, but has not yet reached a new all-time high like Bitcoin has. Indeed, Bitcoin dominance is still quite high at 65%. I don't follow the Bitcoin maximalism line of thinking. I believe other cryptos will have another bull run. It's just a little slow getting started. But that's how it always is. So soon, I think, the value coins with widespread use and a healthy infrastructure will do well. Stuff like Litecoin, privacy coins, anything with real uses and a real support base. Watch out for coins and tokens that continue to be created, mined, or inflated. I went heavy into Steem and its fork Hive, but they have only lost ground against Bitcoin year over year, and I'm not even certain that a bull market can change that. That said, many coins will greatly outperform Bitcoin on this bull run, just like silver is going to outperform gold during the long bull run we've barely started. Before I close, I want to talk about Bitcoin and cryptos as currency. I mentioned before I don't believe in involving governments or corporations in my private transactions like buying food. Until I can use cryptos privately and in a decentralized way, I'm wary. I have been a crypto supporter, you could say enthusiast, a student, and so on for a decade now, essentially, but I hope the future brings more options to people without smartphones and bank accounts like myself. But at the moment, it's uncertain if cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are that future. I certainly prefer them over digital currencies created by banks, corporations, and governments, of course. And I am bullish on the price, but I'm guarded on their ability to avoid manipulation by the state, which is incredibly threatened by decentralization and liberty. Should anyone feel inclined to contribute toward my past or future content, I'm doing something I generally haven't done and providing my Bitcoin address below. Thank you very much. I hope you'll stay tuned to the DRutter channel on YouTube, Library, Odyssey, Float, Steem, Hive, 3Speak, brand new tube, and other platforms linked below. Thanks for watching, and talk to you soon.